Ava thought her past was buried, but the truth was waiting in the studio hallway. One woman claimed to be her real mother. What happened next forced Dr. Phil to stop the interview and confront a secret no one expected. Ava didn't notice the cameras at first. She sat in the studio chair with her shoulders curled in, fingers interlocked so tightly her knuckles were white. To her, today was supposed to be a conversation about anger, about confusion, about why she felt like a stranger in her own life. Dr. Phil had promised a safe space. She wasn't expecting anything dramatic. She wasn't expecting anyone else to walk in. But then the room shifted. It started with a small movement, barely noticeable on camera. A producer stepped quietly from behind the curtain and leaned toward Dr. Phil. He didn't whisper often, and when he did, something serious was brewing. Dr. Phil's expression didn't change, but his eyes did. They tightened, focused, then flicked toward the hallway with a concern he couldn't hide. Ava saw it. She felt it before anyone spoke. Her heartbeat climbed in her chest, a slow thud turning into a drumline. She looked at Dr. Phil, then at the producer, then back again. Something was happening. Something she hadn't been warned about. Is everything okay? She asked. Her voice cracked slightly, like she already knew the answer was no. Dr. Phil took a breath, one of those long, steady breaths he only used when he was choosing his words with care. Ava, he said gently, there's someone here asking to speak with you. Her stomach dropped. She didn't know why. She didn't know who. But the tension in the air told her it wasn't a friend, and it wasn't someone from her past who wanted a casual hello. Who? She whispered. The producer cleared his throat. She says, she's your biological mother. The words hit Ava like cold water. She blinked once, twice, as if her brain needed time to catch up. Her adoptive mother wasn't here today. Her adoptive father wasn't here either. This was supposed to be their boundary, a story she told on her terms. But now someone else had stepped into it. Ava's hands trembled, not from fear alone, but from something deeper, something that had lived inside her since she was 8 years old and first learned what the word adoption meant, something that whispered questions she never had answers to. Dr. Phil kept talking, but Ava barely heard the rest. The camera zoomed in slightly as she stared toward the hallway door, lips parted, breath shallow. Then the handle turned, slowly, almost too slowly. The entire studio froze. Even the air seemed to stop moving, as if the universe itself leaned in to listen. Ava's pulse hammered in her ears. She wasn't ready. She didn't know if she wanted this. She didn't know if this woman, this stranger, carried the truth she'd been craving or a lie that would break her. The door opened wider. But the person who stepped inside wasn't who anyone expected. And in that moment, between recognition and confusion, between hope and dread, the story truly began. What do we do when the past decides to walk right into the room? 3 weeks before that door opened, Ava was sitting on the edge of her bed, watching her phone glow in the dark. It was almost midnight, the kind of hour when your mind drifts into places you don't talk about during the day. She had taken a DNA test months ago for fun, or at least that's what she told her friends. The truth was less playful. She had always felt like a puzzle missing one central piece. The test had shown distant cousins, a few scattered relatives, nothing that felt close enough to matter. But tonight, the screen lit up with a new notification that made her hand shake. You have a new close relative match. Under it, a word she had never seen in her results before, parent-level match. Ava stared at the message as if it might disappear. Part of her wanted to tap it immediately. Another part of her wanted to throw the phone across the room and pretend she never saw it. Because once she opened it, once she learned something, there was no going back. For years, Ava had pretended she was content not knowing her biological roots. Her adoptive parents were loving, supportive, everything a child could ask for. But identity has a way of tugging at you, even when you try to ignore it. Every birthday, she wondered who she looked like. Every time she passed a mirror, she wondered whose eyes stared back at her. And every time she had a fight with her adoptive parents, that old insecurity whispered, "You don't belong anywhere." Tonight, that whisper felt like a scream. She tapped the notification. The page opened with a blurred profile photo and a name she didn't recognize. The connection strength was high. too high to be anything casual. Ava pressed the image, and the blurred outline sharpened into a face. A woman, mid-40s, dark eyes, a familiar jauline. Ava's breath caught in her throat. Those were her eyes. That was her jawline. That was her. She shut the app and opened it again, as if the image might change. But it didn't. The woman looked almost like a future version of Ava, older, tired, carrying a sadness behind her expression that Ava didn't understand. A chill ran up her arms. She thought finding this woman would bring answers. Instead, it brought fear. What if this woman didn't want her? What if she had been rejected once and was about to be rejected again? And worse, what if her adoptive parents discovered she'd done the test behind their backs? They'd always been open about her adoption, but there was an unspoken boundary. Don't go digging. Ava closed the app, turned off her phone, lay back in bed, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. The next morning, she sat at the kitchen table with her adoptive mom, making breakfast. She wanted to say something. She wanted to ask questions without starting a war. But every time she opened her mouth, the words got stuck. "Are you okay?" her mom asked. Ava nodded. "Leet. Just tired." But it wasn't tiredness. It was fear mixed with curiosity, the kind that eats at you slowly. Later that week, she reached out to her therapist, someone she trusted to hold her uncertainty without judgment. They talked through identity, belonging, and the complicated emotions that come with growing up adopted. It helped, but it didn't settle things. Instead, it made something inside Ava even louder. She needed the truth. She needed it more than she needed comfort. When Dr. Phil's team contacted her a few days later, inviting her to share her story about adoption questions and identity, she thought it might be a sign. Maybe a way to process everything. Maybe a way to find answers safely. Maybe even a way to prepare herself before making contact. What she didn't know was that the truth was already moving toward her. Behind the scenes, the show's producers verified the DNA match. They ran background checks, pulled records, cross-referenced birth dates. And the more they dug, the more confusing things became. There were gaps, inconsistencies, dates that didn't line up, a hospital document with a signature that didn't match the attending doctor. It wasn't the kind of information you could ignore. Back in Ava's world, she opened the app again that night, staring at the woman's face. One detail stood out, something small but impossible to unsee. The woman had a tiny birthmark on her left cheekbone, the same one Ava had spent years trying to cover with makeup. Her heart skipped. Was it a coincidence? Or the beginning of something bigger? She zoomed in on the picture, her hands trembling. That same mix of fear and longing washed over her. The kind that keeps you awake, replaying possibilities you're not sure you're ready for. Is the truth always a gift, or can it be a burden? As Ava hovered over the message button, her finger hesitated, because once she pressed it, her whole life might change. And 3 weeks later, it did, right there on Dr. Phil's stage. The night Ava finally gathered the courage to message the woman, the world outside her window was silent. No cars passing, no footsteps on the sidewalk, just the soft hum of her desk lamp and the sound of her own breathing. She stared at the blinking cursor in the message box for almost 10 minutes before typing the simplest words she could manage. I think we're related. She read it once, twice, 3 times, then hit send before she could talk herself out of it. The moment she did, she felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She wanted to throw her phone away. She wanted to rewind time. She wanted answers, but she feared them all at once. Ava placed her phone face down and paced the room. She'd waited her whole life for something like this, but now that it was happening, she felt like a kid again, confused, vulnerable, unsure what the truth might cost her. Then her phone buzzed. 1 buzz, 2, 3. Someone was typing. Ava froze. She turned the phone over, hands trembling slightly. A new message appeared. "Ava, I've been looking for you for 22 years. Her breath caught. She sank on her bed, eyes locked on the screen. The message didn't feel like a stranger reaching out. It felt like someone exhaling a lifetime of pain into one sentence. Before she could reply, another message appeared. "You weren't given up. You were taken from me." Taken. The words slapped her across the chest. Her heart rate spiked. She reread it again and again, trying to make sense of something that didn't fit the story she grew up with. Her adoptive parents always said she was placed in their care because her birth mother couldn't raise her. They never described anything dramatic. No scandals, no danger, just a quiet, heartbreaking decision. But this woman, this supposed DNA match, was claiming something entirely different. Her fingers hovered above the screen, unsure what to believe. "What do you mean taken?" she typed. Almost instantly, the woman replied, "There are things you don't know, things I couldn't prove, but you were never supposed to leave my arms." Ava felt a cold shiver crawl up her spine. The room suddenly felt smaller, as if the truth was pushing it around her. She didn't know whether to feel angry, betrayed, hopeful, or terrified. Before she could ask more, another message arrived. "I know you may not trust me, but I can prove who I am. I just need a chance to talk to you." Ava didn't respond. Not yet. Her mind was a storm of doubt and longing. She wanted to believe the woman. She wanted to understand. But she was afraid of the whole foundation of her life cracking open. She set the phone down, staring at her reflection in the dark window. Who was she, really? Whose story had she been living? And what if she wasn't the girl she thought she was? Meanwhile, miles away, Dr. Phil's investigative team was digging through public records, adoption files, and archived documents. What they found didn't give them answers, only more questions. One hospital record from Ava's birth had two versions. One handwritten, one typed. The signatures on each didn't match. A third document was missing entirely. Something wasn't right. One producer on the team whispered, "This doesn't look like a clean adoption." Another replied, "It looks like someone tried to hide something." While Ava wrestled with her identity, the team uncovered something even more alarming. A sealed police report filed the night Ava was born. But when they tried to access it, the system returned an error. It had been restricted by someone with legal authority. Dr. Phil was handed a slim manila envelope containing preliminary findings. He read the first page, then the second. By the third page, his expression shifted from curiosity to deep concern. "This girl's entire childhood," he whispered, "may have been built on a false story." The next morning, Ava woke to a flood of new messages, not from the woman, but from the DNA service itself. Security notifications, identity verification prompts. It looked like someone had been trying to access her data from another device. Her heart pounded. She messaged the woman again. "Are you trying to get into my account?" "No," the woman replied quickly. "But someone doesn't want you to know the truth." They never did. Ava closed her eyes, overwhelmed. Nothing made sense anymore. Was this woman telling the truth? Was she manipulating her? Or was someone else hiding something far bigger? As her anxiety built, her phone buzzed again, but this time with a call from the Dr. Phil show. They needed her to come in early. They had something to discuss. Something serious. When Ava arrived at the studio days later, a producer handed Dr. Phil a second envelope, thicker than the last one. Sealed. Confidential. Inside it was a file that would challenge everything Ava believed about her adoption. Dr. Phil looked at it for a long moment before turning to the producer with a calm but firm voice. "Get Ava on stage," he said. "This changes everything." What would you do if your entire childhood story suddenly felt like a lie? When the studio lights dimmed during the commercial break, Ava sat alone on the stage, her fingers tapping against her knee in a nervous rhythm she couldn't control. She had no idea that behind the scenes, a storm was already breaking open, one that involved two mothers, two stories, and one truth she wasn't prepared to face. Dr. Phil stepped off the stage, moving with the steady, measured steps of someone who knew the next few minutes could change a young woman's entire life. The hallway was quiet except for the soft buzzing of cameras being repositioned and the faint murmur of producers coordinating the next segment. At the end of the hallway stood the woman who had arrived without warning. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't trembling. She stood with her hands clasped together, as if holding herself in place. Her eyes were fixed on the floor until she heard Dr. Phil's footsteps approaching. Then she looked up, slowly, cautiously, and the vulnerability in her expression was almost painful to witness. "Thank you for seeing me," she whispered. Dr. Phil nodded. "Before anything moves forward, I need to understand why you're here." The woman reached into her purse and pulled out a small, faded photograph. The edges were worn, the colors slightly washed from age. Dr. Phil took it carefully. It was a newborn baby, swaddled, sleeping, with a tiny reddish birthmark on her left cheekbone. A birthmark identical to Ava's. Dr. Phil's eyes lifted to meet the woman's. She held her breath, waiting for his reaction. "That's my daughter," she said, her voice cracking. "They told me she died." The words hung in the air, heavy, shattering. Before Dr. Phil could respond, she pulled out a second item, a folded police report, edges creased as if she'd held it hundreds of times over the years. "I filed this the night she disappeared from the hospital. They dismissed it after 2 days. 2 days. They said I was confused, grieving, mistaken." Her hands trembled now, but not from fear, more from decades of bottled grief finally spilling through the cracks. Meanwhile, down the hall, Ava's adoptive parents arrived unexpectedly, escorted by another producer. They looked pale, confused, and panicked. Ava's mother was wiping tears before she'd even stepped into the backstage corridor. Her father held a stack of documents, a folder so thick it looked like a shield he wanted to protect his daughter with. "We need to speak with Dr. Phil," her father insisted. "This woman is lying. She's unstable. We followed every legal step. We saved Ava from a dangerous situation." But the producer cut him off gently. "Dr. Phil is talking to her right now." Ava's adoptive parents froze. Talking to her. Right now. A wave of dread washed over them simultaneously, as if they both feared the exact same thing. That 22 years of love might not be enough to withstand whatever story was coming next. Back in the side room, Dr. Phil was piecing together the fragments like a forensic puzzle. "You said they told you she died?" he asked. The woman nodded. "A nurse told me the next morning. She said my baby didn't make it through the night. But something in my heart," her voice shook. "Something told me she was wrong. A mother knows. I begged to see the body. They refused. They said it wasn't healthy for me. And her voice cracked under the weight of her own memory. "I let them convince me." She looked up at Dr. Phil, tears now falling openly. "For months later, I filed a complaint. It never went anywhere. I couldn't afford a lawyer. And the father, he was violent, controlling. He threatened me, told me to stop asking questions, or I'd regret it." Dr. Phil felt a chill settle over him. The puzzle pieces were forming a picture, one full of fear, desperation, and hidden secrets. But the other side of the story was waiting at the door. He stepped out of the room just as Ava's adoptive parents were escorted in. The moment they saw him, they began talking over each other, denying any wrongdoing, insisting they had papers, insisting they had followed the law, insisting they weren't the villains. "We saved her," Ava's mother said through tears. "She was in danger. Her biological father, he was abusive. We were told her mother couldn't protect her." Dr. Phil raised his hand to quiet them. "Both of you need to understand," he said slowly. "There are 2 stories here, and both of them contain parts of the truth." Their faces went pale. A producer approached him urgently. "We need to go back on air in 60 seconds. Dr. Phil looked toward the stage, where Ava sat alone, unaware of the emotional earthquake happening just a few feet away. She didn't know 2 women were fighting for the same truth. She didn't know her past was splitting open behind the curtain. He inhaled slowly, absorbing everything. The woman's grief, the adoptive parents' desperation, the documents that contradicted one another. Then he made a decision that would shake the entire room. He turned to the producer with a calm, firm voice. "We need to stop the interview, because what was coming next couldn't happen on a stage built for television. Can 2 people both tell the truth and still hurt each other?" The moment Dr. Phil halted the interview, the entire studio shifted into crisis mode. Quietly, professionally, but unmistakably. Crew members moved with hushed urgency, cameras tilted down, and the audience was escorted out with a polite excuse about a technical reset. But this wasn't technical. This was personal. This was raw. And for Ava, this was the moment her world stopped spinning and started shaking instead. Security led her from the stage to a private conference room. White walls, soft lighting, a round table meant to feel safe. But nothing felt safe. Not the room, not her thoughts, not the pounding of her heart against her ribs. She didn't know what Dr. Phil had learned backstage, and the silence around her made that uncertainty echo louder. She stared at the door, waiting, imagining every possible scenario. Was someone lying? Was someone dangerous? Was she in the middle of something bigger than she ever imagined? After what felt like an hour, though it was barely 10 minutes, the door opened and Dr. Phil walked in with a seriousness that stripped the air from the room. "Ava," he said softly, "I need you to prepare yourself." She swallowed hard, her palms damp against the chair. Before he could say more, another producer stepped in holding a sealed envelope. Thick, heavy, marked confidential, lab priority. Ava's eyes locked onto it. Her breath caught. "You ran a test," she whispered. "Didn't you?" Dr. Phil nodded. "When the woman arrived and claimed to be your biological mother, we fast-tracked a maternity DNA test. I wanted to make sure we were dealing with facts, not guesses, not stories." Ava's chest tightened. She whispered, But Dr. Phil didn't open the envelope yet. Instead, he sat with her, really sat, with the kind of steady eye contact meant to anchor a drowning mind. "No matter what's in this envelope," he said, "you need to understand something. You are still you. Your story isn't being rewritten. It's being clarified." Her eyes filled with tears, not from sadness, but from pressure. Pressure of the unknown, pressure of 22 years of questions colliding at once. He opened the envelope. The paper rustled, a tiny sound that felt enormous in the quiet room. Dr. Phil scanned the first page, his expression softening in a way that told Ava everything before he said a word. "Ava, the test came back positive. She's your biological mother." Ava's breath left her body in a single sharp exhale. She covered her mouth, tears spilling instantly. Not from joy, not from pain, but from shock so deep it rooted her to the chair. All the questions she'd been carrying for years suddenly felt real. Tangible. Heavy. But Dr. Phil wasn't done. "There's more you need to hear," he said gently. The next page in the file detailed something that caught even him off guard. The adoption wasn't a kidnapping, but it wasn't clean or legal either. It was a desperate arrangement orchestrated by someone in Ava's biological family, a relative who wanted to protect the newborn from the violent father and who believed the birth mother was too traumatized and unsafe to make decisions. That relative had connections. They used them, and they took Ava away under the false pretext that she hadn't survived childbirth. They convinced the mother she needed to let go. They forged signatures. They pushed paperwork through channels that bypassed regulations. It wasn't a criminal mastermind plot. It wasn't a villain scheme. It was fear. It was panic. It was misguided protection. And the adoptive parents? They truly thought they were saving a baby. Dr. Phil laid the documents gently on the table. Ava stared at them, her hands trembling. Her mind raced with competing emotions. Relief that she hadn't been abandoned. Grief for the mother who mourned her, confusion about the family who raised her, and anger toward the relative who played fate. She whispered, "So, she never gave me up?" "No, Ava," he said. "She thought you died." The tears came harder now. Not soft tears, deep, shuddering sobs that broke through her last line of self-control. Dr. Phil moved his chair closer, grounding her with a hand on her shoulder. But then, quietly, shaken, Ava asked a question that stunned everyone in the room. "Did my adoptive parents know?" The room went silent, and that silence was louder than any answer. Because at that exact moment, just outside the door, both mothers, one who lost her baby, one who raised her, were waiting, and both believed their version of the truth. Ava wiped her tears and pushed out a broken breath. "I want to see them," she whispered. "All of them. Now." It was the kind of moment that could heal or destroy. And as Dr. Phil rose to open the door, he knew the next few minutes would define the rest of Ava's life. When you finally know who you are, what happens next? When the door finally opened, Ava stood up on unsteady legs. It felt like the floor beneath her had turned to sand. Soft, shifting, impossible to trust. Dr. Phil stepped aside, allowing the three people waiting in the hallway to enter. First came her adoptive parents, faces tight with worry and love. Behind them, The woman who had claimed to be her biological mother walked in slowly, as if afraid she might break something simply by breathing. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. No one dared. Ava looked from one woman to the other, her eyes red and glossy. The adoptive mother who'd held her through nightmares. The biological mother who'd held a photo of a baby she believed was gone. Two lives. Two stories. One heart caught in the middle. It wasn't a dramatic reunion, not a movie moment with swelling music. It was quiet, fragile, raw. The biological mother took a slow step forward. Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't. "Ava," she whispered, I never wanted to lose you." Ava's adoptive mother tensed, a tiny movement only a daughter would notice. She gently placed her hand over her chest, as if protecting her heart from being split open. Ava swallowed hard. Her throat was tight. Her voice barely made it out. "Did you know?" she asked the woman she grew up calling Mom. Her adoptive mother's eyes filled with tears instantly. "No," she said. "I swear to you, we didn't know. We were told your mother couldn't keep you safe. We believed we were saving you. If we hadn't known the truth, if we had known she was told you died, we never would have taken part." The biological mother flinched. The words "told you died," hitting her like a fresh wound. She wiped her cheeks, but the tears kept coming. She whispered, "I never stopped looking. I prayed every night that I was wrong, that you were alive somewhere. I just didn't know how to find you." Ava's adoptive father stepped forward, his voice steady but cracked with emotion. "We love you," he said. "We've loved you since the moment they placed you in our arms. If we were part of something wrong, we didn't see it. We didn't want to see it. But we never meant to steal you from anyone." A painful truth settled in the room. There were no villains here. Only people who made decisions out of fear, love, desperation, or ignorance. Ava wiped her cheeks and took a slow breath. She sat down, motioning for everyone else to do the same. For the first time, they weren't two sides of a story. They were four people trapped in the same truth. The biological mother reached into her purse again, pulling out a folded envelope. "I wrote this," she said softly, "the day I went to the hospital to say goodbye. I thought you were gone. I never sent it to anyone. I didn't have anyone to send it to. But I kept it. For you." She set the envelope gently in front of Ava. Ava hesitated before opening it. The paper was old, the ink slightly faded. It smelled faintly like lavender, maybe from a drawer it had been kept in for years. Ava unfolded it and began reading silently. The letter wasn't long. It wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. It spoke of dreams for a baby girl she believed she lost. It spoke of hope beyond heartbreak. It spoke of love so deep it twisted her breath as she read it. Halfway through, Ava broke. She covered her face with both hands, crying so hard her shoulders shook. Both mothers reached toward her instinctively, at the same time, and for a split second, their hands touched. Then something unexpected happened. They didn't pull away. Instead, slowly, cautiously, they both placed a hand on Ava's back, their palms overlapping in a symbolic gesture that neither could have planned. A gesture that said, "She is ours," in different ways, in real ways, in ways we're still learning how to understand. Ava lifted her head. Through tears, she whispered, "I don't want to lose either of you." Her adoptive mom leaned closer. "You won't," she promised. Her biological mother wiped her tears and nodded. "I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm just here." It wasn't a perfect solution. It wasn't a magical fix. Healing rarely happens all at once. But it was a beginning. Weeks later, the show filmed a follow-up segment. Not for drama, but for closure. Ava sat between both families, calmer now, stronger now. Her voice had a new clarity, as if she'd stepped into a part of herself she never knew was missing. She spoke about identity, forgiveness, and the painful beauty of discovering the truth. She spoke about the anger she carried for years and the compassion she was learning to hold now. She spoke about the letter, how it had rewritten something deep inside her. And Dr. Phil ended the segment with a message not just to the families, but to everyone watching. "Secrets don't disappear," he said. "They wait. And when the truth comes out, it hurts. But then, if we let it, it heals." The camera zoomed in on Ava one last time as she revealed the decision that surprised even her. "I'm keeping both last names," she said softly, "because both parts of my life brought me here." A simple sentence, a powerful legacy, a reminder that family isn't DNA alone or love alone, but the courage to hold both truths at once. What does family truly mean? Blood, love, or both? If Ava's journey moved you, consider sharing your own story of healing, adoption, or forgiveness in the comments. You never know who might need to hear it. And if you want more stories that explore truth, family, and second chances, you're welcome to stay with us for the next chapter of understanding.